Here outside the stadium at Vanderbilt for the very first DawgWalk of the season and our very first edition of the Kroger Kickoff. My name is Brandon Adams, and we have got thousands of Georgia fans literally already outside the stadium. They are ready to make their move inside the stadium coming up in just a little bit, and in a couple of moments you'll also get your chance to see the Georgia players as they walk by for the first time this season. Many of these, think about like freshman wide receivers Dominic Blaylock and Nolan Smith, freshman defensive players like linebackers, George Pickens and Dominic Blaylock on the offensive side, defensive guys like Nolan Smith, going through the DawgWalk here for the first time. This will no doubt be a special moment for them and their families. And this is the kind of thing that they've dreamed about for a long time. It's one of the reasons why you want to play at a program like UGA, because it's these kinds of atmospheres. Even in Vanderbilt, which is by total attendance the smallest stadium in the SEC, it is an SEC-style atmosphere that they've dreamed about, and today they'll get one. And Georgia fans are going to do their part for making this particular SEC-style atmosphere feel a lot like Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia, despite the fact that Georgia is literally hundreds of miles away from its home. But it'll certainly be made to feel like home today by all of the action and all the red and black that'll be here. If you've been in and around Nashville over the last couple of days, you know how much red and black has been congregated up and down Broadway and all the major tourist centers around Nashville, the city known as Music City. There have been all kinds of Georgia fans all over the place, and the moment they've been waiting for will happen at 6:30 local time here and 7:30 Eastern time if you're watching back in the state of Georgia as Georgia takes on Vanderbilt. You're watching our Kroger Kickoff. Huge thanks to Kroger for making all of this possible. You'll be able to see the DawgWalk here coming up in just a moment. Of course, as we're thinking about the start of the college football season and as we're thinking about our friends at Kroger, we're also thinking about the other big event taking place this weekend. That's Labor Day. And you can make Labor Day Flavor Day when it comes to Kroger. Big savings on everything you need for the cookout or the pool party or kind of everything you have going on there in your neighborhood or wherever you are. If you can't be in Nashville, that's the next best thing. So go to the Kroger app or Kroger.com and start downloading those coupons. You can use those this weekend and go ahead and get some big savings on that. We'll talk about some of the keys to the game here as we get ready for Georgia to arrive. And while we're waiting on them, it'll also be a great chance for you to get involved as well in talking about some of the things that you see happening here on this field here this evening. We've obviously been saying what we think might happen for quite some time, and the moment for predictions is now about to be over. It's the moment for actually playing this game. In just a moment, we'll get a chance to see that. But while we wait and while we get ready, a chance for you to share some of your thoughts. Let me pop over here on YouTube first. We'll take some comments there, and we'll hear a few more on the Facebook side in a moment. Dan Hensley checking in to say, go 89, go 24, Charlie Werner and Prather Hudson. So Dan casting his lot with some of his personal fan favorites there. That's a nice thing to be able to see. Danny Blackman checking in. Good to see you there. Jackson 19 says Georgia's going to win. And I certainly think you'll see a lot of confidence from UGA fans regarding that. I guess the question becomes, in the minds of many UGA fans, by how much? Georgia has been at a 3-touchdown favorite now for most of this week, hovering a little bit above that here over the last couple of days, and depending on where you may have looked, it may have changed a little bit since then. And so the curiosity becomes not just will Georgia win, but how impressive will Georgia look in doing so compared to a Clemson team that opened the season on Thursday night on the ACC Network against Georgia Tech, the other major national contender that Georgia measures itself by, its arch nemesis in the SEC the last couple of years, who, at least in the early going, was scuffling along with Duke a bit in Atlanta. So Georgia will play a bit of a comparative score game with both Alabama and Clemson today and on many days this upcoming season, and a chance to get some style points, even if they don't really matter in any kind of tangible sense, even if it's just a symbolic gesture. It's the kind of thing a lot of UGA fans would still like to see the Dogs get. It is hot in Nashville. It is more than 90 degrees according to the thermometers. It's probably even hotter where we're standing right now because we are on concrete and there are a whole lot of people around us. So if you want to know what it feels like in the game day environment right now, that's a pretty good guess. And when you see and hear these cheers go up, and you may even hear some sirens in a moment from some of the local law enforcement, just know that the camera will turn away from me. It'll turn over to my right. You'll get a chance to see Kirby Smart. He'll probably be shaking some hands along the line and some of those Georgia players as they come through there. Here on YouTube for a few more comments here, Chad Cahill checking in. Jackson 19 says, you think Jake's going to go for 100+? I certainly think Jake Fromm's looking to have a big day here today. Danny Blackman, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that. Good to see Kelly Burnett checking in about the other quarterbacks who've been in action today. And obviously a lot of these are names that Georgia fans know well. Justin Fields got off to a big start for Ohio State. maybe slowed down a bit after that. I know that in the early going, Jacob Easton had thrown a touchdown pass in the Washington game versus Eastern Washington. That's another one of these comparative deals that'll go on after the first weekend of the season. How does Fromm, his quarterback, look in comparison to Fields in a new home and Jacob Easton in a new home as well? I think that's a fair point to bring up. Bill Kibbe says, would love to see Zamir White break out with a 100-plus yard game. Yeah, me and some of the Georgia fans who were gathered here outside Vanderbilt Stadium were talking about that a little earlier, how much White will get used today. My prediction is that he's used a lot. Now, I've said on Dog Nation Daily this week that I believe that Brian Herring will be Georgia's leading rusher today, but in terms of heavy usage for White, could I see him getting double-digit carries somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe as much as 14 or maybe possibly 15 carries today? I certainly think that possibility exists. I do think Georgia wants to involve a lot of running backs, and it remains to be seen, given some of the murky circumstances surrounding DeAndre Swift at practice as of late, how much he'll be used today, including some of Kirby Smart's own words to that effect going back late last week. But one thing we do know, because of the growing momentum among Georgia fans and seemingly within the program, this will be a big debut for Zamir White, a chance to do some of the things in front of a national television audience and in front of all these Georgia fans in attendance that we've heard whispers of him doing now going back a year. Working hard to recover from 2 ACL injuries, now being fully healthy, thought to have played well in the first scrimmage when some UGA donors were invited to be in the stadium there that day and seeing him, and nothing has happened since then to change that really at all. So today could be a day to kind of see some of that kind of stuff. You can also hear some Georgia fans behind me getting some of the cheers going, and obviously everybody having a good time. Enjoyed Nashville the last couple of days. That'll continue today. For those of you who are going to be watching this game on television, though, first of all, let me say thanks for being a part of our Kroger Kickoff here today, live from Vanderbilt. My name is Dog Nation's Brandon Adams. Don't forget that there is a TV switch for this game. The Florida State-Boise State game was initially supposed to be played in Jacksonville. Some threatening weather from Hurricane Dorian had caused that game to move back to Tallahassee, and the move to Tallahassee for the game also changed the television schedule just a bit. So Georgia, initially scheduled to be a part of the SEC network, will now take place on ESPN. Same broadcast team, Tom Hart, who we had this week on Dog Nation Daily, along with former Vanderbilt quarterback Jordan Rogers and Cole Kubelik in the analyst role. That team from the SEC network will now move over, and they'll have the call for you on ESPN a little bit later on tonight. A few more YouTube comments, and we'll go check things out on Facebook here. Andrew Kelly says it's going to set the tone for the entire season tonight, and a lot of Georgia fans certainly hope that's indeed the case. Starting to see some red and black movement around here, some movement here in Nashville. That means the Dogs can't be too far away, by the way. Thanks for being with us for the DawgWalk as a part of our Kroger Kickoff. Devin Glenn checking in with Zeus. Always love hearing that. We'll pop over here on Facebook just for a moment and find out what Dog fans are saying over there as well as part of our Kroger Kickoff. As I told you a moment ago, and for those of you who are just joining us, I'll remind you one more time, we are only a couple of minutes away from the first dog walk of the 2019 season. We're live outside Vanderbilt Stadium. Georgia's going to be here. Their buses will pull up. You may hear some sirens. You may see you'll hear a lot of cheering from fans. And at that point in time, Georgia will be on its way. So keep your eyes on that. We'll get ready to deliver that to you here in just a moment. And while we wait, we'll do some more YouTube comments in a moment. How about some Facebook comments here for right now? Ron Moon checking in from Vancouver, Washington. Ron, thanks for checking in from so far away. Appreciate that. Our buddy Mick is here from Florida, so a lot of Georgia fans from all over the country are here on hand to see the game, and it's also nice to have folks checking in from around the country. Talked to some Dog fans a moment ago who traveled down from Wisconsin to see this game, and I imagine if you walked up and down these streets of Nashville near this Vanderbilt campus, you might find Georgia fans from just about all 50 states, at least close to that, who've chosen to be here today. Alan and Jennifer Enterkin says about George Pickens, no way they can keep him off the field, too much talent. And I would certainly agree with that at some point this season, the talents of Pickens are going to emerge, and we're going to see a big moment or two from him. I guess the question, and I do think it's a fair question, is how much does that come up today? How much does that happen here today? We certainly see while Georgia is thought to be inexperienced at the wide receiver position, there is certainly a seasoned group of guys waiting for their chance to occupy and fill the roles that guys like McCole Hardman and Riley Ridley were in a year ago. Today, I believe, could belong to them. Think about Demetrius Roberts in that instance. A guy who was here last year, did not play a ton, but might get his chance to do more. Tonight, I believe, is an example of him doing just that. Tyler Simmons is an example of that. So Pickens will get his moment, but I will be very curious to find out if that comes tonight. By the way, I'll also tell you, don't forget that tonight, after the game is over with, as you're reading all the stuff at DawgNation.com, make sure you follow along during the game at the forum at forum.DawgNation.com, where I'll be interacting with you during the game and talking about everything that happens there. Of course, the entire Dawg Nation team will be a part of that with you inside the forum at forum.DawgNation.com. And then tonight, when the game is over, from down on the field at Vanderbilt Stadium, we'll hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart, we'll hear from Georgia players, and myself and Jeff Sintel on the field as part of our Dawg Nation postgame show. So hope you'll join us there for that as well, as you're kind of sitting back and maybe watching the end of some of the other games or kind of following some of the other things that have happened today in college football. Hope you will also follow along with us as we give you our thoughts and kind of in the moment, heat of the moment reaction to what happens with Georgia and Vanderbilt on what continues to be a very hot Saturday afternoon here in Nashville for sure. Jason Sparks checking in from Daytona Beach. Jason, good to have you with us here as a part of the program here today. Pete Ellis checking in. It's going to be like another home game for the Dogs here today, and it indeed could be that. Lavelle Hughes says going to be 200-yard rushers here today. You may see that indeed. Certainly going to see a number of different Georgia running backs heavily involved in what goes on today. You're going to see some of that. Rob Jackson here on the ground with us in Nashville, Tennessee. Rob checking in. Rob, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Philip Jordan Wells says in addition to watching UGA, he's also going to be watching in closely on some of these other games as well. And I don't blame you, Philip. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with some of these. You saw the two Mississippi schools from the SEC not look great today. Ole Miss losing at Memphis. Mississippi State having its issues with Louisiana. Kentucky, who has not done well as a double-digit home favorite as of late. Had some issues, I guess, for a while, but finally pulls away there in Lexington at Kroger Field. And then it'll be Auburn, Oregon coming up a little bit later on this evening. That'll be simultaneous to the Georgia-Vanderbilt game. And, of course, Alabama's playing Duke right now. Connor, if you've got an Alabama-Duke score, I'd love to know one. I don't know if I can pull it up real quick, but y'all shout these scores out if you see them. All right, so 14-3 at the half. Was that scoreless at the end of the first quarter? It was certainly, you go deep in the first quarter, if nothing else, with no score in Alabama-Duke, and now you've gotten that 14-3 lead. I've seen some of the Alabama fans on Twitter complaining about what might be a little bit of a deliberate pace of play by Duke. Maybe that's by design. You know, some of us talked this week about David Cutcliffe being good against the spread in non-conference games and good against the spread early in the season. This may be an example of that today. The spread, of course, is still very much in doubt for Alabama and Duke. But thus far, doing what he can to keep it close. Obviously, the Blue Devils, from a talent standpoint, completely overmatched in comparison to the Crimson Tide. And if you're curious, some of these suspended Alabama players that were supposed to be, at least it was thought, were supposed to be out for the entirety of the first half, only end up sitting out a quarter. This is guys like Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, the two running backs, a couple of other guys there as well. They end up only sitting out one quarter here. I don't know if that was the plan all along or how that got misconstrued from coming out of Tuscaloosa, but a little bit of difference there when it comes to that. Starting to hear some more rumblings and cheers back here. That might mean that Georgia's getting even closer to being here, but as Philip Jordan Wells said, we will continue to watch what's going on with some of these other SEC games. In fact, we may want to go ahead and get the camera position so we can see the team when they start to come out here. They're going to be here in just a moment, so we'll get ready to do that in just a second. Randy Jackson says there were 4 starters out for Alabama, but they only end up sitting out the first quarter. Of course, the big news coming out of Tuscaloosa this week, and no doubt impacting the game against Duke, is the injury of Dylan Moses, the Alabama defensive leader, arguably the most talented player on that Alabama defense. ACL injury. That's a serious blow to the Crimson Tide's championship formula, really, for this year. And so we'll certainly look forward to getting an evaluation after the game, how much Alabama may have missed Moses today against the Blue Devils. Wayne Folan checking in to say 42-7 Dogs. Wayne, of course, one of our Pennsylvania area Georgia fans. Good to see him checking in. Kevin Drummer says the absence of Moses doesn't matter against Duke, and I would probably agree with Kevin on that. Jimmy Miller says, we've been following this one a little bit too, so Tennessee's taking a 3-point lead, apparently, according to Jimmy, against Georgia State. But we were talking earlier, that was 14-14. It looks like Tennessee may have kicked the field goal there, so little problems there for Pruitt. He's got some pretty key early season non-conference games. The BYU game comes to mind here. This is a Tennessee team that needs bowl eligibility badly, and there are not a lot of guaranteed wins in the SEC for him. And so this will be one of those things that a game against Georgia State, not only does Tennessee need to win it, that goes without saying, they need to look good doing so. There's a growing restlessness among Vols fans about the current state of that program. Pruitt's done some things as a recruiter, but he's got a little ways to go in terms of success on the field. So we'll see how that changes here coming up. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, yeah, Clay Dotson, this is a good point to bring up. Congratulations goes out to former Georgia running back Elijah Holyfield. Holyfield's a story that we followed for quite some time. Left Georgia after his junior season. Some Georgia fans had questioned that decision. He wanted to play in the NFL badly. Went undrafted after not running the 40-yard dash time he would have liked to have run. He goes undrafted, and yet today he was selected as a member of the Carolina Panthers roster. Not as good a news for Terry Godwin, who missed out on that opportunity, but congratulations goes out to a former Georgia running back Elijah Holyfield, and now we can say officially a member of the Carolina Panthers. He will make the 53-man active roster, so congratulations to him on that. That's a great thing to be able to see. For those of you who are just joining us, let me remind you who we are, what we're doing, and why we're here right now. We're live just outside Vanderbilt Stadium. This is our first Kroger Kickoff of the year, where in just a couple of minutes, Georgia's going to take on Vanderbilt inside the stadium here. But before that happens, we get a chance to see the players when they walk by as a part of the first dog walk of the 2019 season. And for many of these players, the first dog walk of their career, the kind of moment they've dreamed about as a part of their college careers. They'll get to see that today, and you, as a part of our video program here, will get a chance to see that too as it goes by. So stick with us for a couple of minutes, and we'll be able to see Georgia when they come. Those buses should be pulling up here any moment. Folks are getting ready for it to go down, so we'll let you know when it happens. Tony Gibo says excited for Nolan Smith. Many people are. Kibo Weir says congrats to Holyfield. Travis McCullough also bringing up a really good point here as well. Natrez Patrick, another one of these Georgia guys to show off and do well as part of the preseason, and Natrez has been selected as a member of the Los Angeles Rams active roster here too. Natrez had a couple big moments in preseason games for the Rams, working as an outside linebacker, interestingly enough, and Natrez makes the Rams roster there too, so that's a great thing to be able to see. Justin Glaze says he can't wait to see who starts at right guard today between Ben Cleveland and Cade Mays, and no doubt this game may have a little bit of extra meaning for Mays. He's from Knoxville, and Knoxville's not necessarily right next door to Nashville, but he's back in his home state here again today. And there's been some chatter over the course of the last month that maybe Mays was ready to supplant Mays as the first-team right guard. It reminds me a lot of what happened back during the spring, though, when you heard a lot of the same things, and then on G-Day, which admittedly is not a real football game the way the game against Vanderbilt is, but on G-Day, it was Ben Cleveland who once again got his chance to work with the ones, the so-called starters, which is what the red team offense on G-Day is believed to be. My prediction, to the extent that means anything, is that Cleveland will start today. I believe that Mays will play a lot, and I believe that you can, for the most part, especially in road games like this, with the number of players that you can take is limited, I think for the most part you can consider Mays, especially for right now when Jamari Salyer is dealing with an injury, you can consider Mays, I believe, the number one backup at all five positions. That may be enough to hold him back for now out of the first five and give Cleveland, who by all indications is fully healthy, and when he was healthy over the last couple of years, had really performed admirably for the Georgia offensive line. My guess is it will be Cleveland that gets that nod over him, but obviously for a lot of position battles and things like that, we'll be watching closely to see how that goes. It's also much the same way when it comes to the cornerback situation. You know, is it Eric Stokes? Is it DJ Daniel? And the thing that probably matters more than anything else is the fact that behind me you start to hear a little bit different kind of cheer right now, which means it looks like the Georgia buses have shown up. The first folks walking through looks to be some representatives of the Red Coat Band. They're the first folks walking through, so we may still be a couple of minutes away from the Georgia coaches and players. Looks like the band here today, those who travel with the band anyway, are going to be using the same entrance to the stadium that the players are using. So maybe a little bit of a false start there in terms of the Georgia players coming through, but we'll see them when they get ready to go. Let's get over here and see a little bit more of what's going on here on the YouTube side of things. Zimmer Biamet says Nolan Smith and Azeez Ojulari are going to make themselves a household name today, and that very much could be the case. We may see those guys become very well known. Of course, they're already quite well known amongst Georgia fans. They may become even more well known amongst the rest of the college football world today. Georgia obviously wants more havoc plays. That includes sacks and tackles for loss, and guys like that certainly have an opportunity to bring that to UGA. By the way, thanks for being with us as part of our Kroger Kickoff. Don't forget to check out Kroger for everything that you need. Coming up for this big Labor Day weekend, Kroger.com, the Kroger app, a great place to go to download some coupons to start savings. If you're having a pool party or a game watching party, something on the front porch or the back patio, out on the deck, Kroger a great place to be. So make sure you check that out at the Kroger that is closest to you. Sam Watson brings up a pretty good point that a lot of teams have looked sloppy in week one. If you want to go back to week 0, that's probably also true for Miami and Florida. A week ago, most of the folks, I don't have the ACC network, so frankly I didn't see this for myself, but a lot of the folks said that Clemson was a little sloppy as well in its week 1 demolition of Georgia Tech. Maybe that's been true for Alabama in the early going here, maybe some others. So it'll be curious to see if Georgia looks more crisp than some of the other teams that have played here in week 1. There is some stadium PA music that's starting to play here. Vanderbilt's a very different logistic setup than a lot of the SEC stadiums are. Many stadiums open well before, 2 hours before, but around the time that Georgia's walking in, the stadium here is also going to open as well. So much around the same time the Georgia players make their way in, we'll also see the Georgia fans and the Vanderbilt fans also start to make their way in there too. So the quiet atmosphere that has been really around the Vanderbilt Stadium for the most part over the course of the day, that starts to change a little bit, and all of a sudden this often sleepy campus starts to feel like it really is going to host a big-time college football game. And the Georgia fans who've made Nashville come alive in the downtown sector all weekend long, they now bring that energy here, and we really do start to get the vibe and the feeling they were only a couple of minutes away from the start of the game. We are also about 15 minutes after we thought that Georgia was going to be here, so hopefully they should be here in just a moment, and as we continue to wait on them, we'll continue to get some of your comments there as well. Joshua Simmons, thanks for the update on 14-3 Alabama against Duke. Appreciate that. Famed DRTB says Duke started game with the option and then went all the way down the field. Kind of a nice thing to be able to see. Good stuff there on that. Tram Dog says one of our YouTube regulars, the guy named G. Grace, is an Alabama fan. Certainly he may be biting his nails right now, although my guess is Alabama may going to eventually get an easy win, even if it's not quite the manner in which they Crimson Tide fans would like to see it. Brian McPhail says Duke has a player from Buford and Mill Creek on defense. Yeah, it's kind of ironic, Brian, that we're in an era in which teams that neighbor Georgia have more Georgians than ever before, as Georgia kind of transitions into an era in which it probably arguably is recruiting fewer Georgians than it ever has before. Kind of an interesting contrast, and that's obviously something that Georgia fans have been talking about for quite some time, as Georgia pursues the best 25 they can get with every single one of its signing classes. And seemingly lately that's included fewer Georgians. But what Georgia has left available for the rest of the country, they have certainly no doubt gotten in line to come get. Duke probably in line behind the Tennessees and the Clemsons and the South Carolinas, and maybe now to a degree the rise of Georgia Tech under Jeff Collins. Those teams are going to do a lot of recruiting in Atlanta, while Georgia seems content to do most of its recruiting elsewhere. Kind of an interesting trend that has been emerging. Brian McPhail also asking about the 70 Georgia players that make the bus. Many of you are aware of this rule that for SEC games on the road, you're only allowed to travel 70. You have 85 players in scholarship, and a couple of the players that you travel are not thought to be on scholarship. Think about holders and snappers and things along those lines. Third-string quarterback, for instance, here. So that means that for a program like Georgia, as deep as it is, a number of scholarship players are not going to be here. And at least in Georgia's case, there's also the potential chance that like 5-star incoming freshmen, or no longer incoming, a 5-star freshman might not be here as well. Think about Clay Webb here for a moment. When you look at the number of offensive linemen that Georgia's likely to travel, the key backups there, we know that Cade Mays has been getting some work at the center position. Warren Erickson's been in the program. I think that opens the door for a possibility that a guy like Webb is not here. Most Georgia fans have at least considered this as a possibility, at least those who have been paying attention to the story. But for the average college football fan of the average college football program, it's heretofore unheard of for a 5-star freshman not to make his team's travel roster. But that's no indictment of potentially Webb, if that's indeed the case with him, or anyone else who doesn't make the trip here this weekend. That's simply a practical reality of what it's like with so many Georgia players trying to squeeze in into such a limited opportunity. If Georgia was playing Alabama today, the way it will in September of 2020, the 70 you choose to travel with, the 70 that you can play with, in a very close razor-thin game, that could potentially be the difference in a victory or a loss, depending on strategically how you use that. Obviously, for Georgia and Vanderbilt today, it's not thought that the guys that make this trip as the 66th through 70th person are going to impact the final score or the final outcome of this game. But it is, however, an interesting window into the current hierarchy within the Georgia program, and that's why some fans are curious about it. I don't remember if I said this a moment ago or not, so if I didn't, let me restate this. Georgia has also made it known that they are not releasing this. So there'll be plenty of role taking from our guys like Mike Griffith, Connor Riley, and some of the guys who are going to be down on the field here today. I'll be looking for some of this kind of stuff too. So there'll be plenty of role taking. It'll have to be kind of an unofficial 70, and for the most part, you can do that because really probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 55 of these guys, there's no debate, no question about whatsoever. It's only the final 10 to 15, maybe 20, where there'd be some questioning. So you'll see at DawgNation.com or in the forum at forum.DawgNation.com what closely approximates an unofficial list of the full 70, but you may not get the official word from Georgia. So we now have a developing situation. I think it is now fair to say this is something. So Georgia State has taken a 21-17 lead over Tennessee. Y'all keep your eyes on this. So I'll admit that I'm not an expert on Georgia State. They're running a triple option offense now, is that correct? So that's obviously a problem. You know a little bit of the story for Tennessee going into this game. Aubrey Solomon was made eligible. If y'all are watching the game, I'd love to know if Solomon's playing today. I don't know if you know that, Connor. Trey Smith was medically cleared to play in this game. I don't know if he's played. That's two former five-star recruits on the lines of scrimmage. Solomon, a defensive guy. Smith, an offensive guy who were basically granted back onto the Tennessee roster here before the game. I don't know if they've impacted or even played in this game here today. There was also the weird situation involving Bryce Thompson, the defensive back, one of the thought to be starters for Tennessee, who became embattled in a domestic situation. His reported second allegation of domestic violence, the previous one dating back to his time before coming to Tennessee. There was also some extenuating circumstances that made this a little worse there as well. So we will follow all of this and see where that goes. But for now, Georgia State is leading Tennessee 21-17, and we will follow this, and we will certainly see where that goes. We'll also take some of your comments here as part of our Kroger Kickoff, where the DawgWalk will emerge here in a couple of minutes. And hopefully at some point in time we will see we'll see the Georgia players and coaches make their way through and walk through as a part of the DawgWalk here coming up in just a minute. Let's take a few more of your YouTube comments while we wait. Crow King 123 says, Georgia State is awful. My FCS KSU Owls nearly killed them last year. Yeah, hard to believe that that this is going on right now, because certainly when you think about potential upsets and things that could possibly be going on, this is not one of the games that you would have thought would be happening. But as it stands right now, Georgia State is beating Tennessee, and we'll continue to follow this and kind of see where all of that goes. Crow King also making mention of something we talked about a little earlier, the fact that Elijah Holyfield did make the Carolina Panthers roster, and that's certainly an exciting thing to be able to see there. Chris Singletary, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that. Crow King 123, also on the subject of Natrez Patrick making the roster for the Rams. Yeah, we mentioned that a little earlier. That's good stuff to be able to see. Thomas Van Santa saying he's going to be watching the game from his hibachi grill. Hope you're grilling up something good today, Thomas. Appreciate that. Thanks for checking in as a part of our Kroger Kickoff here today, too. Drew Eist saying that he thinks they're going to rotate Mays in the game to keep everyone fresh, and I believe that's likely true. I think that Mays is going to play a good bit. I think they want to continue to get him his experience. I think that Mays, whether he starts this year or not, is almost definitely a starter the following year, and I think that experience is important. And here's the other thing. Sometimes there is such a thing as a good problem to have that is still a problem. Mays is a good enough player to start even if he doesn't. Cleveland is a good enough player to start even if he doesn't. So while it's nice to have that additional depth, it's also one of these things of you want to reward guys with playing time who've proven they've earned and deserved that playing time. So it'll be an interesting situation for Georgia coach Kirby Smart and offensive line coach Sam Pittman to navigate here. But my guess is they'll find a way to keep everybody happy. Mays on the field a good bit, whether he's starting or not. Cleveland on the field a good bit, whether he's starting or not. And then once Jamari Salyer returns to full health, because Salyer, coming out of high school for the class of 2018, was just as substantial a prospect as Cade Mays was. Once he's back to full health, I think that he'll also have a role on this field too. Mays was recruited to Georgia Salyer was recruited to Georgia as an interior offensive lineman, but has kind of found a little bit of a home as well on the right side at tackle, which is a little bit different profile, an expansion of the original profile that we thought might be the case for Salyer. So he will be heavily used as well, but likely not today. My guess is that Salyer won't even be on the sideline as he continues to battle an injury, but none of that's official. All of that's just our predictions. Joshua Simmons says all of these good teams today are struggling to weaker teams. Hope that's not the case for UGA. Yeah, Joshua, I no doubt know a lot of Georgia fans who've been waiting for such a long time for this season to begin. They don't want to see any strugglings from their team whatsoever. Brandon Wynn said, who will have more rushing yards tonight between Swift and Harrion? My pick on that, Brandon, is Brian Harrion. If I've made him as my pick to be Georgia's leading rusher tonight, either because Georgia just chooses not to use Swift a ton, or maybe Swift is still dealing with a minor ailment of some kind. One way or another, I think we see a heavy dose of Brian Harrion, and my prediction is a heavy dose of Zamir White. We'll see what happens beyond that, but I do believe that Brian Harrion leads this team in rushing tonight. We shall follow that and kind of see where it goes. Kelly Burnett also picks Eric Stokes to have an interception and a return for a touchdown. That'd be an exciting thing for Georgia fans to be able to see, and hopefully, speaking of Stokes, hopefully we'll be able to see him and others pretty soon. You may see a BA pass it on this sidewalk pretty soon if you don't see the Georgia players come running through here. So y'all keep your eye on that if nothing else. Let's check in on some other YouTube comments. They kind of roll through here. Pro King 123 said lots of groups of five, be Power Fives, ending their seasons. Yeah, they really did. There was a lot of that going on here today. Brian Kephart says, Sup Dog Nation, pan to your left. Yeah, so we got a lot of fans here around here right now getting ready to watch and be a part of everything going on here. Will says he's rooting for Georgia State to win that game. And, yeah, I think a lot of Georgia fans will kind of migrate over and be a little bit of a fan of the other in-state school if the Panthers have a chance to knock off Tennessee today. We've seen Georgia State be upset-minded in NCAA tournaments before, beating Wisconsin going back a number of years in the tournament back in the early 2000s, earning a big win with R.J. Hunter a couple of years ago. So we're used to seeing Georgia State pull off upsets and during March Madness. A little late August madness for Georgia State. We'll have to follow that and see where it goes. No doubt that would be a deflating moment for Neyland Stadium if that indeed happens, if that's indeed the case. More YouTube comments kind of roll through here. Kelly Burnett laughing at Tennessee here. Yeah, Robert Terry says Solomon is playing today, so there's that. An update on something that we were hoping to see a little bit more to. Georgia Peach says switching back to the Alabama game. All right, Peach, you do that, and you keep us updated on what you're seeing over there. Chris Singletary says Jacob Eason is looking good. Connor, is that kind of what you've seen? Pretty good numbers for Eason thus far today? That's nice to be able to hear. Maybe an injury update coming out of this Alabama game we might want to check on here a little bit coming up, and we'll see if we can do more of that. Andrew Hughes checking in. Appreciate that. Kale Westbrook checking in to say that he wants to see Alabama at its best, and right now, for at least what we know right now, it would appear that Alabama won't be at its best when it plays Georgia if they do play in December because of the injury to Dylan Moses. And, of course, over the course of a long season, there'll probably be other injuries that pile up for both Alabama and potentially UGA as we get there. Football is a violent collision-type sport, and managing injuries and maintaining your depth is an important part of the sport for both UGA and Alabama there as well. Let me pop over here to Facebook, too. Boy, lots and lots of Georgia fans. By my count, maybe as many as a couple thousand here getting ready for the dog walk, and they are ready to see it. And I'm ready to bring it to you. I can promise you that. A lot of folks checking in. Brett Barfield says, does Nolan Smith play today, BA? And I would say, yes, he does. I think Nolan plays a lot. I think that Nolan at one point in time was in contention to be a starter. Is he one of the first 11 guys in this team today? That may be asking a bit much, but playing a lot in heavy rotation, I'd be very surprised if that's not the case. I would indeed expect that to be the case. Jimmy Miller says Tennessee has turned it over on down, so folks are doing a pretty good job of helping us keep up to date on everything's going here. Shirley Sutton Horn checking in. Shirley, we appreciate you. Billy Hurley wants to see the ball thrown to Charlie Werner 6 times tonight. A lot of Georgia fans would love to be able to see that. A lot of Georgia fans would love to be able to see that. Gary and Christian Gulisano says Georgian former UGA quarterbacks might be the top 3 in the country. How about them Dawgs? Yeah, could be very interesting to see what these quarterbacks, both from at Georgia and the other 2 former Georgia quarterbacks, they could be set up to do some very good things. Rel Bridge is coming in with a national championship prediction for UGA, saying the Dawgs going to win it all. You heard it here first. Well, that's nice to be able to hear. Certainly we'll look forward to seeing how that takes shape. Paige Shaw asking about George Pickens, how much Pickens will be used today. We talked about this a little earlier in the show. I want to reset this topic for those who may just be joining us. My guess is that Pickens is going to be used a lot at Georgia this season. I will admit that I have my curiosities and maybe even my skepticism that he's one of the top 2 or 3 Georgia receivers today. Does that prohibit him from getting a big-time highlight like the one that leaked out back in early August? Of course it does not. But if I had to guess, today from a receiving standpoint, it's going to belong to the guys who've been here. My prediction to be Georgia's leading receiver today is Demetrius Robertson. I think that Robertson worked through a lot for Georgia a year ago in a season when he didn't play quite as much. Of course, he did have a touchdown in the season opener last year against Austin Peay. I think the hard work that he's undergone over the last year will be rewarded today. I think you can say a similar thing about Tyler Simmons. Potentially a newcomer like Lawrence Cager, because he has played and because he's certainly familiar with the James Coley system. He may get his chance.
I think they're coming through. Traffic wouldn't let them through, and I'm hearing.
Okay, so I've got. Hey, let me get Jeff's intel here. Jeff, say this on camera so people can hear you.
Hey guys, what we're hearing right now is traffic would not let the team through, and they are already in the locker room. So a lot of people that are here hoping and waiting for a glimpse. I don't think it's going to happen.
So the 2019 season is off to a rip-roaring start. For those of you that were tuned in for the DawgWalk, sorry to say that. Is this for sure? All right, so sorry to say that. So it looks like the Georgia team has entered the stadium somewhere else. We've got thousands of people watching us right now across our various video platforms. There's going to be a ton of disappointment around here. There have been people standing here for a very, very long time. 40 minutes. But it looks like Georgia is not going to make its way through here. However, thanks for being with us as part of our Kroger Kickoff. We will see you after the game as part of our Dog Nation post-game show. We will see you there for that. And, of course, during the game at the forum at forum.dawgnation.com, a lot of fun stuff at dawgnation.com as well. Georgia's getting ready to take on Vanderbilt. We've got coverage. We'll see you after the game. Thanks for being a part of our Kroger Kickoff.